Hey guys, Joby Zombie here, and I'm going to do a horror zone re-review, I should say, on zombie flesh eaters. The reason why I say re-review is because I did this video about 3 years ago, but this time this is an in-depth review, and it's all scripted, so let's get to it. Zombie Flesh Eaters, as it's known in the UK, is a 1979 movie directed by Lucio Fulci. If you're unaware of him, he directed movies such as The Beyond, City of the Living Dead, and The House by the Cemetery, but he is mainly known for directing this movie. The film was supposed to be served as a sequel to George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead, which was released in 1978. However, it has no connection to Romero's trilogy of the Dead. As for the cast of characters, we have Ian McCulloch as Peter West, Tisa Farrow as Anne Bowles, Al Cliver as Brian Hall, Aretta Gay as Susan Barrett, Richard Johnson as Dr. David Minard, and Olga Carlotos as Paula Minard. And here are just a couple of facts about the film. The film was released under 2 other titles in other parts of the world. The other titles included Zombie, Zombie 2, which is spelled Zombi 2, Voodoo, Island of the Flesh Eaters, and Island of the Living Dead. I think the strongest one out of those is probably Island of the Flesh Eaters. I really like that title. I think it sticks well. I thought at one point it was called Island of the Dead, but obviously not. Island of the Living Dead, again with Night of the Living Dead, stays too close to that type of thing, so yeah. But I think Zombie Flesh Eaters is a good title. Another fact is that the producers of the film wanted to keep the film a low budget movie, and they wouldn't do it for the money that was offered, and I think that's really, really good, because I appreciate low budget movies, whether they are shit or whether they are good. I don't care whether they're good or rubbish. I appreciate low budget movies because it tells me that I can go out and make a film with nothing, so that's why I appreciate it. But anyway, here's the synopsis of the film. The film starts with the gun coming into frame when we see a bagged up body rise from a bed. The gun is then fired and the body takes a shot to the head. After that, we see a silhouetted man behind the gun say, "The boat can leave now, tell the crew." Then the title screen appears with the music played by Fabio Frizzi, and I have to say, the music is spot on. Absolutely spot on. It absolutely sets the mood for this film. Very creepy and eerie, I think. After that, we then cut to an abandoned boat drifting across New York. A harbour patrol appears with 2 patrolmen. One goes onto the boat and investigates why it's been abandoned. Upon his arrival, he notices some grisly things, such as mouldy, out-of-date food with maggots, also a blooded hand on a piano. When suddenly, without warning, a bloated zombie bursts through the door, pins down the patrolman, and takes a bite from his neck. The second patrolman hears his partner scream and takes out his gun. Whilst doing so, the zombie comes up from the boat and is in the patrolman's sight. He then warns the zombie not to come any further, otherwise he will shoot. The zombie continues to walk until the patrolman fires his gun into the zombie, and the zombie falls overboard. Shortly after, we see a reporter named Peter West, who is sent to take a closer investigation of what happened on the boat. Here's something I'm going to point out. The dubbing in this scene is the worst I have ever seen in a film. Ian McCulloch is speaking perfectly English, whereas the other actor alongside him, I think, originally was speaking Italian, but obviously, because it's not an English film, they had to dub it in English. So it doesn't sync whatsoever. It's very laughable, but it was the best they could do. But anyway, moving on from that badly dubbed scene. Shortly after, we see some investigators on the boat, and then we see a woman by the name of Anne Bowles who is looking for her father, who has gone missing. Now, I thought that when I first saw this movie that the first zombie that we see was her father, but it's not. It's not at all. In fact, we never see her father in the film. Shortly after, Anne teams up with Peter and hires a boat with 2 guides, Brian Hall and his wife Susan Barrett. From there, they head to the island of Matul. Now, coming up is quite an iconic scene in zombie movie history. Susan decides to go swimming in the ocean. She encounters a shark and flees behind a reef. However, when behind the reef, a hand grabs her shoulder. She turns to see a zombie. I was quite shocked to find out that zombies could swim. I mean, it's a reanimated corpse, but it knows how to swim. And the zombies in this movie are they're good zombies, you know, they're shambling zombies, but they know how to swim. But anyway, moving on. She manages to escape from the zombie, and then here is where we see the iconic scene, zombie versus shark. It's a good scene really, because we've never seen anything like that in a zombie film. It's really good. The shark's just swimming and the zombie just grabs the shark, sort of wrestles with it, takes a bite out of the shark, pulls some flesh off the shark and just chews on it, and then goes away and stuff. But it's a really good scene nonetheless. But anyhow, Susan manages to escape from the shark and is helped back up on board. Now, this is where some more bad acting comes in. Susan's acting at this point is really bad. I mean, she comes back on board, she's quivering, and then she's like, really bad dubbed as well. It's like, there was a man down there, and Peter's like, what? Susan repeats herself, there was a man, and Peter just says, a man? It's like really bad acting. I mean, yes, she goes swimming. She said there was a man down there. I expected Peter to be like, well, you know, it's swimming. That's what people do in oceans. They swim. You don't. If she would have said there was something down there, then that would have made more sense. But moving on. Later in the next scene, on the island, we see Dr. Minard and his wife Paula. Minard's wife is very trippy at this point and wants to flee from the island, but Minard insists that she stays. However, later that night, Minard is called away and his wife is home alone. She takes a shower, and then we see a zombie's hand pressed up against the window, spying on Paula. After that, we see a zombie trying to enter the house, and Minard's wife is trying her best to barricade herself in and keep the zombie out. But then, the zombie's hand bursts through and grabs her hair, pulling her towards a splinter. This scene is very graphic, and really struck me the first time I saw it. The camera then zooms in on her eye as it gets closer and closer to the splinter, when suddenly the splinter enters her iris, gouging out her eye. Yeah, and it shows it in graphic detail. And then the next scene after that is just even worse. We then see Minard in his hospital with a bagged up body. He waits for it to reanimate, it then rises, and he shoots it in the head. So it's sort of re-showing the first few seconds of the film. We then see Peter and Brian and Susan go to Minard's house, only to find Minard's wife's gory body being eaten by zombies. And I'm not kidding, there's about 1, 2, 3, 4. There's about 4 zombies on the floor, tearing chunks from her stomach, chewing on them, and it's her stomach's like wide open, and you can see all the intestine. It's so graphic. This film doesn't give a shit when it comes to gore. It's in your face gore, and it may be low budget, but it's good. It's fucking good gore. So the group managed to kill the remaining zombies and escape in a jeep. Whilst doing so, Brian hits a zombie whilst driving, and this causes them to veer off-road and crash the jeep. Now, Peter has incurred an ankle injury, so the group decide to rest in a jungle, apart from Brian and Susan, who decide to continue looking for help. Then we cut back to Anne and Peter, who are lying on the ground resting. Suddenly, we see a zombie's hand rise from the ground and grab Anne's hair, and another grabs Peter's injured ankle. Brian then hears the screams and runs to their attention. When then we see the infamous worm-eyed zombie, which is the zombie which appeared on most of the posters. We see this zombie rise from the ground And again, this is where I have an issue with the film. Susan just stands there, just looks up at the zombie, just rise from the ground, just, hello, thanks for coming out. She just stands there, and the zombie then kills Susan by biting the flesh from her neck. And I wasn't lying about the gore in this film. The gore in this film is absolutely top notch, especially in this scene. When the zombie arises from the ground, Susan obviously just stands there. He gnashes his teeth and then he goes in for the kill. Takes a chunk out of her neck. But when he pulls the chunk off, it's still attached, and then it's almost as if the camera zooms in so you could see that little bit of flesh just tear away from the other bit of flesh, and it just literally just tears, and then the blood starts to spurt out. It is awesome. It is zombie effects at its best, I think, anyway. So then Susan falls to the ground. Brian then comes back along with Anne and Peter to find Susan's bloodied body on the floor. He then shoots the zombie in the back with his rifle, but this does no harm to the zombie. Then Peter grabs a cross from the ground. I'm guessing it was like an ornament or something from the ground. Swings it at the zombie. The zombie then falls to the ground, and then Peter just annihilates the zombie by crushing his skull with the cross. Mortal Kombat style. And every time I see that, I always say, fatality, because it was fatal. The group then leave the jungle, and shortly after, well, in fact straight after, we see zombies rise from the ground, and it's just a fantastic scene. We've got Fabio Frizzi's music playing in the background, and they're just rising slowly. The graves are falling over. We've got maggots coming out of their eyes, worms in their mouth. They look decayed. They look fantastic. Absolutely spot on. So the group then find Dr. Minards' hospital and take refuge. Brian barricades the group in. However, the zombies in the hospital start to reanimate. Dr. Minard is killed, and the outside zombies start to enter the hospital. The group light up Molotov cocktails and load their weapons and try to kill the remaining zombies. This scene is probably my favourite in the film because they're getting annihilated. The zombies in this scene, are getting annihilated. Molotov cocktails are being thrown at them, they're being burned, arms are falling off, limbs are falling off, they're getting exploded, shot in the head. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. The group then escape the hospital as it explodes. Brian and Peter kill a few remaining zombies outside, when suddenly Brian runs into Susan. She's now undead. Brian is bitten and begs Peter to shoot Susan. He does. Then Peter and Anne help Brian back on the boat to leave the island. In the next scene, it is daylight. At sea, Brian is almost at the stage where he will reanimate. Peter and Anne lock his now dead body in a cabin to be used as evidence of what happened. And I think that's very clever. I didn't know that until recently, but I think that's very clever. However, as the boat approaches New York, it retells the beginning of the film, sort of. Because as the boat is approaching New York, it's the beginning of the film all over again, where we've got one zombie locked in a cabin, waiting for someone to find out what's in there. And that's obviously, retelling the first half of the film, or the first bit of the film. So that's really, really clever how they did that. So the boat approaches New York once more. Anne and Peter listen to a radio broadcast of voices talking about the zombies taking over the city. Now, here's where we see a good shot of all the zombies in one scene. We see a shot of all the zombies shambling on the bridge of New York, and this is a really good shot. We just see the camera pans out, and then we see all of the zombies just shambling on the bridge of New York. And then we hear the final line of dialogue in the film, which is, "We've just been informed that zombies have entered the building. They're at the door. They're coming in." And then a scream fades out. A horrific scream, even. Spine-chilling scream. Very shrieky. it fades out, and then once more we get the Fabio Frizzi music playing, and then we just get a close-up of all the zombies' faces as they shamble like this, and then we once more get a far shot of the zombies walking up the New York Bridge, and then the credits roll. And that is Zombie Flesh Eaters. But overall, my favourite scenes in the film would have to be zombie versus shark, the eye gouging scene. I really like the scene where zombies are all on the screen at once, where they're trying to get into Minards Hospital because they're just shambling all in a bunch like this to get into the door, and then eventually it breaks and then the barricade falls over and then they enter. I love that scene onwards with the zombies getting Molotov cocktails thrown at them, shot. The scene where Susan cops it with the neck. The beginning. This film is just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. If you're a zombie fan, you can't miss this film. My only downside is the sequels and as the films went on, because in obviously the UK it was released as Zombie Flesh Eaters, and in Italy it was released as ZOMBI, and then in the US it was released as Zombie. So Zombie Flesh Eaters 2 would be Zombie Flesh Eaters 3, if you get what I mean, because it was supposed to be a sequel to Dawn of the Dead. So 4 would be 5, and then yada yada yada. And they did make 5 sequels, which is just watch the first one. I think the first one is, well, if you're American, you're gonna watch the second one. But if you live in the UK, just check out Zombie Flesh Eaters. It's brilliant. So overall, here are my final thoughts. I do recommend Zombie Flesh Eaters. The makeup for a 1970s zombie movie, in my personal opinion, is spot on, absolutely spot on. Yes, there are a couple of zombies that just have a pale face, but overall, if you're a fan of gore, badly dubbed movies, and of course zombies, then this film is totally for you. Whew, so that's been my review of Zombie Flesh Eaters. Thanks for watching, guys. There's been so many jump cuts in this video, I do apologise for that. I've had so many outtakes, you will not believe it. But oh well, I'm gonna let you go now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next review. Take care.